Hello scenery guys and gals, Gus here. Welcome to my layout. Today's video, I wanted to show you how I make corrugated roofing, corrugated siding. I love to see a building that has an old rusted roof or old rusted siding. I like that kind of building. The parts are becoming more and more less and less available in the metal portions. It's in paper or plastic, but I like the feel and sight of the metal corrugated roofing myself. So I'm going to show you today, share my tips and tricks on taking this pan, roasting pan, and turning it into siding. Also at the end of the video, if you stick around, you'll be able to see me do some rust work and turn it into a piece of art. Thanks for stopping by. Let's go get to work. First thing I do is I cut my foil down to my scale size. Now I work in N scale, so these pieces here are about 10 feet wide but about 30 feet long. For my process to age this foil, I actually use a rock tumbler. So I'm cutting them down to size to fit into my tumbler. I then let the tumbler do the work for a few hours, and what I get is pieces of metal that are not shiny anymore. Even the edges on some of the strips have taken a little bit of a beating. Now, if I don't like the color that I have here, if I like it a little bit darker, I can let it process a little bit longer inside of my rock tumbler. Secret's out. I'm using a rock tumbler to age the material. The next step I use is my homemade crimper. Now the gears I 3D printed from a file on Thingiverse. I did modify the file though so that the ridges were more appropriate to my scale. Even then, the scale's not exactly right, but corrugated steel is made in a variety of widths, and so I'm okay with the hills and valleys, the ridges on this piece here. Now, right now I'm using the untreated one because some of the roofs, some of the projects need shiny roofing, but I also have my weathered, my treated foil that I run through here. Sometimes they need to be run through twice just for better definition because of the imperfections on the 3D printing. This is hooked up to my drill, so it makes it nice and easy. Next step is going to be painting. This is the treat I was telling you about in the beginning. Now I use a variety of colors. You're also going to need a small brush and a sponge. I use an orange ceramic paint. These are acrylic paints. I use an orange, a rouge, or a tomato, a golden brown, an antique gold, and then a brown. Also, for my final coat, it's an espresso. Now, one of my first ones here, I was using this brush to put strokes on the material at the beginning. I found that I didn't like that because it left a pattern on that I had to cover up. So
Here is showing stripes or painting lines. My next project, I actually did dabs of the color with the brush. After those lighter colors are in place, I'm using my darker colors, the browns, the deep browns, to cover those lighter colors and create the dimensional look of rust. I like the texture that the sponge gives to the product. Brush strokes or airbrush are a nice coloring, but to get some texture and get some actual feel that the rust is happening, sometimes more than one layer is a good thing. Putting one layer on and it'll dry, and I'll notice that I still need to add some more to it. And that's fine, it works out for me. Adding a second layer or a third layer with the sponge, I find gives a great result. There is no rhyme, there is no reason, there is no pattern to making rust on a roofing or on siding. Look at some pictures online. Look at the roof that you're trying to mimic and try and create that same kind of image. What you have to remember is rust is an ongoing process. It's not a one and done. So a roof that you see this month or next month or next year could be different because of the oxidation that's going on. So this process that I go through of the lighter colors and the darker colors on top is just the process that I see to create the roofing color that I like. The sponge, I enjoy using the sponge simply because it gives texture to the paint. So it's not using a wet paint, a wet layer on there, but using the using the sponge and then dabbing the greater amount of paint off, so there's just a light amount of paint being dabbed on each time. The colors that I use are my own preference as well. And again, I mentioned I was doing my brown and realized I had a darker brown, the espresso, and pulled that paint out and started dabbing it on. It gave it another dimension. It gives it another color, another layer of developing rust. I apologize for having my hands in the way. Kind of hard to work around the camera, but I hope you can see that the layers are being built up and covering these corrugated strips that I've made. Dab it in the wet paint, dab it off on the paper so that it has just a small amount of paint going on for each layer. Here are a few of my finished rust products that I rusted out today. You can see some of the pieces are fairly beat up from the tumbler, and that's fine. I'll find a place for them on the roof that I'm doing for my barn. What do you think of that? That's the roofing that I've been rusting. Corrugated metal roofing. That's what I wanted to have for this scratch-built barn that I haven't painted or stained yet, but it's going to look like it's been hanging around for a lot of years, been patched once or twice, That's the metal roofing that I wanted to have. Someone had asked about the sponges that I use. It's these made by Craft Smart. It's just a sponge on a stick, and you can see here that I cut it up and beat it up a little bit so that when I'm using it, it doesn't have the same pattern on the material. You can see here that these were the original panels that I made. I cut them down in half to be my N-scale size, and now I can easily put them on my roof here. I'm using a CA glue so that it adheres the metal to the wood a lot better. I hope you enjoyed this hack on how to make, or how I made my corrugated roofing and corrugated siding. Hope it helps you out some way. And just as a side note, this barn is going to be available as a kit. I'm going to be producing it and making it available online. Just check out the remarks below. Also, if you're more interested in just the roofing, that's going to be available both in the shiny and the not so shiny, and maybe even the rusted version. But check the remarks below, check the information there. Thanks for hanging out with me today. Give me a comment below on what you think about it, or any information that you have, or your hacks. I'd appreciate hearing about those things. Thanks a lot, appreciate it. Guss out. Thanks.